Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Fan ban? Are Celtic and Rangers harming the Scottish game? We discuss the mountain Steve Clarke's men have to climb to reach Europe 2024, starting with Cyprus hell. And fans have the hump with Hampden ahead of next month's Scottish Cup semi-finals. Are we ever happy in this country? Welcome one and all, I am your host Andrew Slaven, and joining me for this week's episode of the Scottish Football Show, he's the man with a tartan dream from Aberdeen. It's Sky Sports' Anthony Joseph. Hello, pal.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, mate, very well. You got your tartan pants on this week?
Not this week, they're in the wash. Ready for the big week.
Yes, good man, not the whitewash, I hope. And it's the Paisley punter from down under, but professionally he's a football filmmaker and an editor, or whatever. It's Findlay Marks. Hello, mate.
Hey, how you doing? I very much enjoyed the little Cypress Hill nod in the intro there. It's always a good thing to be reminded of them. A little bit of insane in the membrane.
It could be bursting blood vessels after this weekend. I don't know. Hopefully not. How have you both been? I mean, Anthony, it's been a while since you've been on the show, pal. What have you been up to?
Not much, really. Just working away. Fatherhood. Probably the same with you guys as well, is it?
It kind of is a theme with this podcast. Finn talking about how big the bags under his eyes are getting. Me looking like I'm getting a bit more sleep than most. But yeah, we always start this show with a few funnies, and I'll kick things off by Anthony, very funny on Sky Sports and their coverage of the Motherwell Rangers game. And after 13 minutes, is this cheeky from Motherwell? Have they only stuck one match ball onto the pitch because they lost it very quickly, and you saw Radvan Yilmaz trying to find it under, was that a TV gantry or something like that? It was just the ball got lost.
It was something like that. It was some like scaffolding that was covered, or who knows what it was actually, but it was, the ball boys couldn't reach that one ball that they were looking for.
Because they were trying hard.
They were. And you saw one at the end just sort of shrugging his shoulders, going, well, can't get it. And the whole time I was thinking, why do they not have other balls on them? Is it deliberate? Were they just playing with one match ball? It was so similar to when you're a kid and the ball gets kicked over a fence, and you're having to wait, the game's paused until someone goes round and knocks on someone's door to go and get out of their back garden, that kind of thing. School football, it was quite bizarre, the whole thing.
I think it's quite a common thing, isn't it? If people are hosting one side of the Old Firm, to kind of be a bit sparse with the balls around the side of the pitch, just to slow the tempo down a little bit. But I've not got a massive problem with it. I remember, was it Roman Domenech, who was with the eyebrows? Roman Domenech, the French coach. Yeah, but when it was either, I think it was the match in Hampden where Gary Caldwell scored the winner, and he went off and one about how bad the ball boys were, and that was basically why France lost that day. I seem to remember that being a thing. So you kind of need to use the tools at your disposal. The funniest thing for me though was how much it brought into stark realisation how tiny Yilmaz is. Like, he looked like one of the ball boys just wearing a Rangers kit. That was the funniest thing to me.
Very true. It was 1-0 to Motherwell, and it didn't work out in the end, but there you go. A bit more closer to home for you, Anthony, as well. I spotted you've had a visitor in Aberdeen, particularly in Pittodrie. Have you seen the famous wrestling legend Hacksaw Jim Duggan has paid his visit to the famous Pittodrie?
I did see it.
Are you a wrestling fan?
I'm absolutely not a wrestling fan, and I never was. But
I find this amazing.
My mates, quite a few of them were big wrestling fans when we were like teenagers and younger than that as well. And I just never got into it, especially when I found out that it was fake. So it was...
What? Whoa. What?
But I just never got into it. But I saw this picture and I saw a few people getting excited about it, and it just humoured me. My only connection to wrestling is that I now seem to be followed by John Cena, but so does half of Scottish football journalism and politics at the moment.
Well, I found it funny, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, he was legendary in the late 80s, early 90s, probably the last time Aberdeen had their heyday. But there you go. Famous for 2x4, swapping that for the Granite City. Amazing stuff. I should have said, Finn, did you like wrestling?
No, I'm with Anthony.
Christ, well, stop there. We'll move on. Right. Look, some news now to talk about, and I'm going to start with, stuff that's happening next month. I'd like to hear your take on this. So the Scottish FA Cup semi-finals, Falkirk v Inverness on the 29th of April, and then that's followed by Celtic v Rangers the next day. There's an issue here with fans and ticket prices again. Both games have different kickoff times. Falkirk and Inverness kicking off at 12:15. But the thing is, it's 38 quid for a ticket on the north and south stands. The cheapest is 28 for east and west. Do you think this is unfair for Inverness and Falkirk fans, considering it's a 12:15 kickoff? They've got a sizable journey compared to like Celtic and Rangers fans, the ones that live in Glasgow at least anyway. But yeah, do you think this is unfair, Finn?
Personally, I think I do, yeah. But it's also kind of just this. It's what football is like. That's kind of the going rate. It's a semi-final of a national competition. It's slightly unfair, I guess, especially considering the travel implications for both of these sets of fans. For me, I think it feeds into a slightly bigger question, and this came up when we were talking about the semi-finals and the final round about the League Cup earlier in the season, and I don't really understand why, regardless of who makes it there, both semi-finals and the final are at Hampden, and they're played a day after each other. It just makes no sense. In no other ground in the country, really, do you have two elite level games, let alone semi-finals of a national competition, going on less than 24 hours after each other, or very close to 24 hours after each other. It doesn't make any sense for the spectacle on the pitch for me at all. And I think that there has to be a review of it at some point, because to me it makes much more sense, rather than potentially having a not full national stadium for a semi-final between two groups of supporters like Caley Thistle fans and Falkirk fans. They can't just generate more fans overnight. Like they have a specific size of fan base. It makes much more sense holding these matches at a neutral venue that's much closer geographically, I think, to the two of them. So I don't know why, for example, you take this match to Tannadice or something, it's a much easier distance for both sets of fans to get to. You would have a completely sold out stadium. And it means that whatever pitch the other semi-final is played on, if it is Rangers Celtic, Hampden is the obvious choice just because of the size of venue and the locale of it. But if it were another neutral venue there, it means that the pitch is in the best possible condition for both games. And that, to me, makes for the best possible set of circumstances for the best game of football. Hopefully then you get the best two semi-finals. To me, that's common sense. I don't understand it.
Do you think there's an issue with semi-finals being at Hampden, or is this more of just a Scottish issue, Scottish fan issue that always tries to look for the negative with the SFA?
I think there's merit in both of those points there, but I think I completely agree with Finn on the venues side of things. I wouldn't necessarily scrap Hampden as a venue for semi-finals. We've got to understand why the SFA do rely on these semi-finals and finals being at Hampden. It brings in a lot of money for them. Got to take into account sponsors and the amount of hospitality that they can sell for what are showpiece events, even at semi-final level. So I think a perfect scenario would be to see which teams are in the semis before deciding on the venues. Like Finn said, I'll always remember the year of the Commonwealth Games when it was in Glasgow, 2014. The semi-finals and the finals were not at Hampden. And I was working at Tynecastle for Aberdeen St Johnstone. It was packed out, predominantly Aberdeen fans, but it was packed out. And the atmosphere was amazing. The game was so intense. It was frantic. I know Aberdeen destroyed them, but it played at such a good pace, and they were feeding off the fans in the stands. And it was just a great occasion for everyone involved. And
exactly.
I mean, I don't think it is going to change, but I would like to see it happen. And like, I think Finn used the right wording there. Just put it under review. We don't need to know where the semi-finals are going to be before the start of a season. It's common sense. Try and make Scottish football look as good as it can be and showcase it for what it is. But I do understand the SFA's point of view, and they want the money. I just think for the fans and for the game as a spectacle, I think it would be much better to review it and wait to see who's in the semi-finals before deciding whether you put it at Tynecastle, Easter Road, Tannadice or Hampden.
I guess that's kind of what we're ultimately asking for, and it depends where your priorities lie, because I think you can't just demand it be one way or the other, and I think that's why it needs to be a conversation. But I think us as fans, we're asking the question, but where in the pecking order do the fans come? Because I think I'm only speaking from a personal point of view. Fan experience and selling our game as best as possible are the two biggest things for me regarding Scottish football, and I think it's the two things that so often get pushed so far down the pecking order in favour of a quick buck or really poor contractual obligations that we've kind of locked ourselves into often for years at a time. The semi-final for the League Cup final was the one that was played on the second day. The pitch was an absolute potato field. Like, I don't know. And if you're a neutral tuning in for, well, there's nothing else on, oh look, the Scottish League Cup semi-finals on the Sunday, if you're just seeing that and it's like the pitch is cut up like a paddy field and nobody can string two passes together, it's all hoofball in the air, why on earth would that get a neutral into the game? Because they're not going to tune in for league games. They will tune in more likely for one-off semi-finals or finals or whatever. To me, it doesn't make any sense. So it kind of does down making our game the best possible spectacle, and it also puts fans down, which kind of seems to be a common theme, unfortunately, when a lot of these decisions get made at the top of the game.
Speaking of, communication to fans, it's frustrating and odd as a neutral to see that there's now going to be again, we will see in probably the country's flagship fixture, Celtic and Rangers fans at away games in the final two Celtic and Rangers games of the season, in the league at least. There will be no fans at Celtic Park or at Ibrox. You brought this up in a tweet earlier this in the week, Anthony. Just explain what is the scenario and why are we here?
Going all the way back, Celtic and Rangers used to give each other 7,000 to 8,000 away tickets. Celtic fans would get the whole Broomloan stand at Ibrox, and Rangers fans would get half of the Lisbon Lions stand, upper and lower tier, and the usual away corner as well. And that was, both clubs recognised that this was a special game. It was a spectacle that was viewed across the globe, not necessarily for the football, because of the atmosphere, because of the fierce rivalry and the raw rivalry that exists, which is not always healthy, but certainly it's intriguing for people to watch outside of Scotland. It's one of those games that brings people to their TV screens to watch it. However, in 2018, that all changed. The summer of 2018, many Rangers fans weren't happy at the way Celtic and their fans, I guess, were milking the occasions at Ibrox after their wins, which were quite regular in that period of time. So Rangers cut Celtic's allocation to 800, and Celtic followed. Rangers housed Celtic fans in their usual away corner, and Celtic did the same. They've sort of been on this standoff together for quite some time now. I know there was the COVID season when there was no fans at all, but neither side has thought, well, come on, this is silly. Let's bring it back to what it is. Because do you know what? I speak to people, not Celtic and Rangers fans, not Scottish football fans, but people who would always watch Celtic against Rangers, and they're the ones saying that this, as a spectacle, it's not great. It's just like a normal game. Yes, it's really blooded. The atmospheres are still good, but if the away team's 2-0 up, the other stadium's empty. The majority of Celtic fans, a large majority of Celtic fans, want it back, want the traditional away support back. They want 7,000 to 8,000 Rangers fans back at Celtic Park because they want to have the chance to go to Ibrox and support their team. There's also this other option that I spoke to a few Rangers season ticket holders who go to games regularly as well. In their view, Rangers fans don't want the traditional 7,000 to 8,000 back. They want what they give big European away teams. So it's like 2,500. I don't know if you've seen how Dortmund had it. So they had half of the Broomloan stand plus the away corner. This game is still one of the most viewed football matches as an individual fixture across the globe. It's still one of Sky's biggest games. And if the majority of the fans that go to these games are saying they don't want it to 800, that it seems to be that they want it either back to the traditional 7,000 to 8,000 or reduced, but more of a European away support. They want that spectacle back, and they feed off each other, I guess, the supporters.
I totally accept your point, because from a television point of view, it's massive to just tell the story. If the away team has won, that team goes over to that away support, and you want to show that. Look at the support that has came along to support their team, even though they're in the minority. That's how you tell a story, and it's way better doing that rather than looking at a bunch of empty seats. But there was the two teams were in discussions to try and not barter a deal, but they brought it down to, was it safety concerns? That was all it was, and it seems a bit vague, really, doesn't it?
My understanding of that is that Celtic would like it to go back to the traditional 7,000 to 8,000. Celtic still sell their season tickets as if Rangers get 7,000 to 8,000. So people in that side of the Lisbon Lions stand, they buy their season tickets and it excludes Rangers games. And so then when the Rangers games come up, they can buy their ticket for their seat currently because there's only 800. But the issue is Rangers have now started, because they've had an increase of season ticket sales over the last few years. They've got their Ultras group now in the Broomloan stand, the Union Bears, and they've also sold season tickets in that stand that include Celtic games. So it's going to be more of a logistical issue for Rangers to do that. But what a lot of Rangers season ticket holders have been telling me is that there would still be enough to do it in a European way, like they gave Dortmund half the stand and the usual away section. So there's a lot to. They still seem to be at a standoff. Yes, Celtic might have made the initial approach to say, let's try and get this back, but I mean, they've gone from 800 to 0. So there doesn't seem to be any negotiating going on. It's very much all or nothing, or fine, we won't give you any tickets then. That seems to be what the situation is at the moment. And I personally feel Scottish football is what's suffering from it. So both clubs are suffering from it, and Scottish football is.
I agree. Finn?
The thing that you kind of have to call a spade. I think we both know that both clubs are not really fans of each other, right? Okay?
Yep.
They're starting from a place of animosity, I think, with each other. Regardless of at boardroom level how professional those people are or want to be, they have to take into consideration the feelings of their supporter bases and need to be seen to be looking after that kind of thing. I think a couple of points you made are absolutely brilliant, Anthony, and they were actually ones I was wanting to bring up as well if the conversation hadn't gone that way. You have to look at the practicalities of it. So in terms of stadium capacity, Ibrox is pretty much 10,000 seats fewer than Celtic Park. So I don't think it's really feasible to kind of suggest that we just go back to 7,000, 8,000 away seats, because as a proportion of the stadium, I think it's too big a proportion of the stadium to give away, especially when Rangers have now over 45,000 season ticket holders. And again, to me, I can only speak from my own point of view. I don't think it's fair that any season ticket holder at any club should be expected to fork out thousands, hundreds or thousands for a season ticket, but then be expected, depending on where they are in the stadium, to potentially sacrifice that for arguably the biggest game of the season or the couple of biggest games of the season. I don't think that's fair. I think if you buy a season ticket, you should expect to have a seat for every home game in the league. In terms of the sheer capacity, I don't think 7,000 works. But I completely agree that it is diluted more now as a spectacle because we don't have sizable away supports at either stadium. To me, the fairest compromise, I think, is to look at the UEFA example. So UEFA mandates that every away support is entitled to 5% of the seats within a stadium. So at Ibrox, that means round about 2,450 seats or something for an away match. And I think that's a fair compromise. You look at the games at Ibrox where that allocation has been taken up fully. One of the games that sticks out in my mind was one of the first seasons Rangers made it to the Europa League group stage after Steven Gerrard came in, and it was the home game against, I think it was Rapid Vienna, and they took the full allocation. So they have the whole away section and it spills into part of the Broomloan stand. And the atmosphere was unbelievable. Like, it was bouncing, it was rocking, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is... you get the blood going, the goosebumps going, you're like, this is what it is. I would love that to return.
It's that energy, isn't it?
For Old Firm games at Ibrox. And likewise at Celtic Park, like, I think it's diminished. But also, like, from the spectacle point of view, one of the things that I love to see, I mean, I hate to see it, but like if Celtic scored in at the Broomloan Road end and they've got most of that stand, like the stand went crazy and it's like jumping and the ball goes in, you see like all these things. Conversely, and I'm speaking from a Rangers fan point of view here, I remember when, was it Samaras had his penalty saved by Alan McGregor in the league title run in, was it 2011? And, you know, all the Celtic fans were, you know, willing the ball to go into the net. McGregor makes the save and then they all sit down and then you hear the noise going around the stadium of McGregor having saved the penalty. And it's like that. Those are the moments where, as a fan, it's incredible. It's palpable. And even though I wasn't in the stadium for that game, I could feel that energy coming through the TV. And that's the thing that sells the game. That's really what we're missing. Exactly what you're talking about, Anthony. It doesn't mean that there can't be good home atmospheres, but you're missing out on the spectacle of that rivalry. And that's one of the most brilliant things about the fixture.
It's one of those reasons that almost everybody else in Scottish football sometimes looks at Celtic and Rangers and goes, oh, for God's sake. Like, there's just no respect there at all for each other.
It comes full circle to what we were talking about right at the top of this news section about the considerations for the Falkirk and Calais Thistle fans as well, though. Like, it's
they'd love to have this problem, right?
But it all feeds into this idea of, like, we cut off our nose, I think, so much to spite our face in so many ways around Scottish football. And it just kind of really depresses me at points when there's just not an adult conversation and consideration to all these different things. It not everybody has to get their way the whole time. We know that's not possible, but it's with any of these issues, whether it's ticket allocations or whether it's a venue for a cup final or something like disabled seating or whatever it is, fans just want to know that they're being heard and they want to see their club take their issues seriously rather than just being fobbed off or being satiated with a watered down, it's not even a compromise at some points, it's a watered kind of like almost a gesture of, look, we took care of it for you. And I think that's the most galling thing, because it's indicative to me of the way that so many of the authorities, of the way that club boards even potentially, and other people see and treat the fans.
Sure, but I think in the same token, Celtic and Rangers could turn around and say that this is them listening to their fans. Let's not have any away fans. let's just have more of us. Do you know what I mean? Just that aspect of us versus them. Let's just cut them out. But hey ho, I hope that's not the case, and I hope there will be a solution to it soon, because away fans are worth it. We've got some away fans coming to Hampden. We don't like them. We want to beat them and send them back to their sunny Love Island country, where everything's lovely and nice and they get along. We're going to talk about that next.
Football, bloody hell.
Yes, everyone, Scotland begin their Euro 2024 qualifying campaign this Saturday when they welcome the visit of Cyprus to Hampden. It's a daunting group, though, for Scotland in Group A. They've got Spain, they've got Norway and Georgia, along with Cyprus, of course. So how daunting is this for you guys?
How daunting a group? I think it's daunting because there's two spots and Spain and Norway are in this group. That's the daunting thing. Well, actually, sorry, that's the first daunting thing. Second daunting thing is Georgia. And we don't like playing Georgia. They always muck up our group campaigns somewhere along the line, whether it's Alex McLeish or Gordon Strachan in charge. Perhaps it's different. Am I right in saying, sorry, going back to Cyprus, this game, am I right in saying Stephen Clark's first game was against Cyprus?
Oh, you might be right.
And it was the 94th or 93rd minute winner from Ollie Burke.
It was just before 90 minutes, and I think you're right. Yeah, it was a header. It was saved, and then he just tapped it in. But yeah, I think 2-1. It was a nervy game.
Hopefully, it's not as nervy as that, because I think going by the two other teams in the group, Spain and Norway, Scotland have got to look for maximum points or just not lose any silly games.
Do you think maximum points this weekend? Do you think we have to... not this weekend, sorry, but these next two games? Because we've got Cyprus first, and then it's Spain on Tuesday.
I mean, how can you say maximum points against Spain? I just don't think you can. But 4 points would be amazing. I think I'm expecting 3, and that would be a decent enough start. A lot of this might come down if we manage to see off the likes of Georgia. A lot of this is going to come down to how we do against Norway in both of those games. The only thing that gives me a bit of hope about Norway is, yes, they've got Haaland, yes, they've got some
Odegaard,
they've got Odegaard, they've got other good players,
El Yunusi, Christopher Aya,
players we know, but they didn't qualify for the World Cup.
Haaland was injured.
Okay, that changes everything.
Sorry,
but we've got a good team, and we may not have world-class players, but there's a decent enough squad there, and they seem to be working as a team. And I think, especially going into these next two games, especially going into that Spain game on Tuesday, they've got to look at their performances against Denmark, one of the best Scotland performances, and then Ukraine at home, the most recent one in the Nations League. Those are two of the most exciting and inspiring performances I've seen from a Scotland team for a long time at Hampden. They just battered both teams, and it was just, especially Ukraine, it was relentless. At halftime, it was just like chance after chance after chance. I think it was like 70 minutes by the time they got the first goal. But then once that first one went in, it was an onslaught. So they've got to look at those performances as a benchmark of what they can do and what they can achieve. I'm quietly confident that Scotland are in a good place and on the right track to do something, and perhaps even qualify from this group through the natural way.
What a beautiful jinx you are, Anthony. So cut to the summer, and you're like, I'm not going.
Yeah,
I'm not going to the games. Finn, what are your thoughts, mate? Because there's a few interesting points leading up to this international break, because we discussed Angus Gunn incoming for this weekend. There's also a couple of players coming back, a few players getting a first start potentially. What are your thoughts going into this break?
I genuinely feel quite optimistic about our prospects, not just about these two games, but over the course of the qualifying. I think Anthony's absolutely bang on. I think all we need to do is look to what this squad is capable of, and in our finest moments, the Denmark game wasn't a smash and grab. Like, we played them off the park, and I know it was at the end of the qualifiers and they were already safely through and everything, so there's maybe a little less at stake for them. But we were that's the best I've seen Scotland play in a long time. And the atmosphere of that game was amazing. I was at that one. But I don't think there's any reason for us to fear anyone. I think we might still have a bit of that mental hangover of things like Georgia, or even Norway. I remember getting cuffed under, was it 4-0 from Norway under the George Burley tenure? But I think Steve Clarke has worked so hard for so long to try and chip away at that mentality and to bring us up to a place of like, look, we know we're not the best, but we're at a really good level and we're comparable to a lot of these teams round about us. And I'd see it as a battle between ourselves and Norway for that second spot, but don't think, given how we've played against Denmark, given how we've played against Ukraine in the Nations League and these other examples, I don't think we've got any reason to fear them. I know they've got, this celebrated elite level player in Haaland, but he's just one man, and if whoever's marking him has a great game and they can thwart the threats to coming into him and things like that, you've got, it's the same as any type if you're playing Wales and it was Gareth Bale in his prime, or you're playing Portugal with Cristiano Ronaldo. They're great teams. They've got maybe one or two world class exceptional players there, but they're beatable. And I think especially at Hampden, maybe playing Spain early on in the qualifying goes in our favour. I think the other thing is that Steve Clarke, has made a conscious effort to try and keep the same squad together. So he's not chopping and changing. He's bringing in guys that maybe haven't had as much first team action as he would have preferred, but they're the guys that he's brought into the squad and stuck with over a number of years. And I think that counts for something. He's tried to bring in this squad mentality, and staying faithful to the players that have done it. It's caused problems, especially we were talking about this last week with the goalkeeping issue, and that he's not really played any other goalkeepers apart from Craig Gordon or David Marshall in the last couple of years, which gives us with the situation now of who do you start in goal. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but I feel confident. I don't think 4 points is beyond us. I think we'd have to go some to get something from the Spain game, but I don't think it's impossible. I would expect 3 points from Cyprus, and I think it's really important to get off to a good start. So yeah, I don't know, I feel confident.
I think there's a question on a few players who really need, I think, like big performances out of this break. One person I think in particular, likes of Kieran Tierney, not getting a lot of game time at Arsenal, and he's coming in, and I think he will start. He has to show a massive performance to remind everyone just how quality a player he really is, and how it's always been that difficulty and how he works together with the captain Robertson. But I even look at Lyndon Dykes, who was recently hospitalised at QPR, but is back in the squad. And that's another thing, like you said, Finn, is Clarke likes to keep similar players around to keep that harmony. And it's just, I don't know, I think some big game players, we always look at John McGinn, but I agree with Anthony. Rule out Georgia at your own cost. They've got an absolute world beater. Kvicha Kvaratskhelia for Napoli is just unreal, guys. I just don't think you can discount Georgia and just think us against Norway. I think he's had 23 games in the Serie A and he's been involved in 23 goals or 22 goals. Kvicha, well played. Kvicha Kvaratskhelia.
Who's that again?
There you go. Absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. Yeah, I actually did the Serie A a couple of weeks ago, Napoli game, and I had a few goes at that, so I was kind of prepared. I can't speak Scottish, never mind Georgian names, but there you go. That's my take. Who's going to start in goals then? A heated debate in the last podcast, but Finn, what are your thoughts now after a weekend?
The thing is, in terms of form, I think it's much of a muchness. I mean, if we start by looking at the new boy in the squad and Laura's favourite person on the planet, Angus Gunn, he missed a few games at the end of January, but he's played the last 9 games consecutively for Norwich, in which they've won 4, drawn 3 and lost 2. He's kept himself 3 clean sheets and conceded 7 goals. By contrast, if we look at the other 2 goalkeepers in their last 9 games, Liam Kelly has his Motherwell team have won 3, drawn 2 and lost 4. He's kept 2 clean sheets but conceded 13 goals. Xander Clark at Hearts, they've won 4, drawn 1, lost 4. He's kept 4 clean sheets and conceded 15. So I don't know, I think he might start Xander Clark, just because he's he's the understudy to the Scotland #1 goalkeeper anyway. Of the 2 goalkeepers, so Clark and Kelly I'm talking about now, the ones that have been in the squads before, I think Liam Kelly is the better goalkeeper. So my preference out of the 2 of them would be for Liam Kelly. But then looking at the 3 goalkeepers, I don't really know.
If I'm honest, I don't think he would have brought Angus Gunn in not to start. I think he's coming in to play. There is one amazing thing about this international break. is that the new Scotland top has also been, well, you can now buy it. But it's fucking £90, man. Why do they? It's like that thing. What is it in Sopranos where that guy constantly does the Godfather jokes? Like, I try to get up, but they suck me back in. It's just, I want the Scotland top, but I don't know. Maybe I'll put a ticket in for a raffle.
There was a little bit of justice when it went on sale, where there was meant to be a 15% discount, and people were putting in the code, and it was actually giving them a 30% discount.
Oh my goodness!
And then that was I think after a couple of hours, it was clocked on, and it went back.
So if any of those listeners out there have heard my cries and got 2 of those, I'll buy them on the face value of 30%.
The whole launch hasn't been particularly well handled, I wouldn't say. I think, nobody knew how much the top was going to cost until it was launched, and £90 I just think is a disgraceful amount to ask any football fan to pay for a kit, let alone one that we're going to play. Are we going to wear it 3 times? Is that it? It's going to be match worn in one qualifier, one friendly against England, and one women's team match, and I think that's it. So I think that's an absolutely shocking amount of money.
Just because this is the anniversary.
But we were making the point, like, why not play in it for the whole year? Yeah, why not make that our home top for a whole year?
Oh,
I don't get it.
We know the answer.
Oh, well, to make money.
No, we know the answer. It makes too much sense.
Yeah.
It has to be complicated.
It just goes back once again to that thing of the fans being like an afterthought. It's like they're seen as cash cows. They're not seen as loyal supporters. Even the thing is, it was interesting because you were talking about that discount code. It was supposed to be a discount code for Scotland Supporters Club members, but it wasn't a unique code like for each person. It was just the one blanket code. So as soon as it was leaked online, everybody could jump in, and even that is like, these fans that have been following Scotland home and away, spending thousands and all of their available annual leave to go to these games and stuff like that, and even then they don't get to take advantage of that with what was probably a decent gesture. Even though I think even with £30 off, what, £60 is just that's a lot of money.
I don't know. I think I'd maybe go to 60. To be fair, I think that's probably my limit.
Would you? I think I've stopped buying football tops at the time they go on sale, because in like 9 months it'll be £30.
Yeah.
Or £25. It's just, everything is just overpriced at the moment, isn't it? And actually, people were mentioning that, yeah, £90. I think that's quite similar to what Man United sell their new home tops for when they come out. The thought of it, £70 for a kid's top. It's just,
that ain't right.
Especially at this time, we're going through a cost of living crisis.
Yeah, that's not right.
To ask people to pay £90 for a shirt that the team is only going to be wearing for a few games.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's just trying to make money as much as they can, and it's just not a good look, is it?
You think I'm going to answer a stupid question like that?
Well, look, guys, that is it for another episode. Happy days. I have to say my thanks to Findlay Marks, a.k.a. Helen Lovejoy from The Simpsons. Would somebody think of the fan? That's what you've been like, the last hour. And Anthony Joseph, top man, good to see you again. Thanks to you, listeners. We appreciate you. But if you do hate us, or if you do like us, you can tweet us at TSFS Podcast. And that is us for another week. Go and listen to something else now. Bye.